Russia has just received another powerful message, and this time it came wrapped in an explosion that shook St. Petersburg to its core. The blast wasn't random. It was calculated, aimed straight at the heart of Russia's logistics network. In seconds, trains stopped, supplies stalled, and soldiers were left stranded. The symbolism couldn't be clearer. If Putin's hometown can be crippled, key routes elsewhere may be vulnerable. To understand what really happened, the emphasis is on the railway, not the blast itself. For Russia, the rails are everything. They're not just for passengers or cargo, they're the arteries that keep the entire country, and its war, alive. In a nation as vast and brutal as Russia, where roads vanish under snow and mud, trains are the veins that carry life through the system. When those veins break, the whole body weakens. That reliance runs deep into history. The Tsars used trains to move troops and maintain control across the empire. The Soviets used them to survive wars and crises. Even now, the 105,000 kilometers of active rail lines, third largest in the world, serve as both infrastructure and symbol. Historically, control of rail corridors has aligned with control of territory. Russia's reliance on trains for military logistics intensified after the Ukraine invasion. Analysts estimate that a large share of heavy equipment is transported by rail. Tanks, missiles, artillery, fuel transported by rail. The Western Military District, including St. Petersburg, depends on this system. For example, the Pskov-St. the Petersburg corridor moves thousands of tons weekly. Disrupting this line severely hampers the entire front. On October 21st, that's exactly what happened. A powerful explosion tore through the railway linking Pskov and St. Petersburg, derailing a freight train in a flash of fire and smoke. Photos that slipped past sensors showed scorched tracks, mangled metal, and security agents picking through debris by flashlight. Officials called it an incident, but local posts and imagery suggested a more serious incident. The location, just a short distance from Estonia, was too strategic, too symbolic. That corridor feeds the Western Military District, the same command responsible for operations near the Baltic states and parts of northern Ukraine. The trains that ran along it didn't carry tourists. They carried ammunition, fuel, and military hardware. When they stopped, the shock rippled through the entire system. Military shipments froze, civilian routes were suspended, and repair crews worked for days just to restore partial service. Logistics is vital in warfare. Delays cause supply shortages, resulting in frontline casualties. Russia's military already faces supply issues, and a few days of lost transport means missing fuel or ammunition. The same rail lines that sustain the war also power Russia's economy, carrying grain, coal, and oil. Sanctions have already put Russia's economy under strain. Now, every derailed train adds more pressure. A 3-day delay can mean millions lost in trade and productivity. When prices rise at home because shipments never arrive, ordinary Russians start asking questions, and that's the last thing the Kremlin wants. Online, despite censorship, videos of the explosion spread quickly. People watch smoke pouring into the sky, and rail cars lying twisted in ditches. The question spread even faster. How could this happen in St. Petersburg? This wasn't a remote frontier. This was Putin's hometown, Russia's window to Europe. If saboteurs could hit here, what else could they reach? The truth is, Russia's railways have been under silent attack for months. Since the early stages of the war, what looked like technical failures have turned out to be acts of sabotage. A signal malfunction here, a derailment there, each one dismissed as an accident until the pattern became impossible to ignore. By late 2023, Russia stopped publicly reporting half of these incidents. In September of that year, explosives planted along the Stary Oskol Veliki line in Belgorod derailed 11 cars and a locomotive. Officials blamed mechanical issues, but Ukraine's special forces later claimed responsibility. In Ryazan, another train exploded a few weeks later, far from the front, but close to military hubs. Western analysts immediately called it what it was: sabotage. By mid-2024, strikes shifted northwest, repeatedly targeting the Pskov-St. Petersburg rail line. Partisan groups and Ukrainian operatives used small, remote charges to hit freight trains carrying fuel and ammunition. Despite Russian state media downplaying the damage, independent investigators assessed the attacks as strategic, not chaotic. A grassroots movement called Stop the Wagons spread through Russia, comprised of ordinary citizens resisting the war. Lacking military equipment, they used simple tools, wrenches, wire cutters, and small explosives to damage signal systems or joint bars, derailing trains and crippling supply lines for days. This idea wasn't new. In early 2022, Belarusian railway workers had already started sabotaging Russian troop movements by cutting cables and blocking trains. Many were arrested or disappeared, but their actions inspired others. The idea crossed the border into Russia itself, and it's now come home to St. Petersburg. Recent attacks have evolved beyond physical sabotage to include targeting communication lines, power stations, and potentially cyber warfare. In August 2025, a reported digital strike on the St. Petersburg-Moscow railway by hackers crippled ticketing and dispatch systems reports estimated multi-million-dollar disruption. If this digital action was coordinated with physical sabotage, it signifies a new phase: hybrid warfare. Russia's railway technology, much of it dating back to the 1990s, is especially vulnerable. A low-cost signal jammers bought online could disrupt traffic for hours. Combine that with explosives, and even Moscow's tightest defenses can't keep up. The country's vast size becomes a weakness. With 11 time zones of track, comprehensive protection is implausible. While these partisans work quietly inside Russia, Ukraine's military intelligence has taken the same logic to a higher level. Instead of targeting trains, Kiev's special operations teams have gone after bridges, refineries, and power grids, the infrastructure that fuels Russia's war machine. The Kerch Bridge, the 12-mile span linking Russia to Crimea and a vital supply artery built in 2018, has been a key Ukrainian target. Ukraine has struck it multiple times. A truck bomb attack in October 2022 collapsed the road deck. Drones hit it again in July 2023. And on June 3rd, 2025, explosive-laden underwater drones detonated beneath the supports, which reporting indicated a significant temporary reduction in flows to Crimea. Other infrastructure has followed. The Ryazan refinery was hit in early 2024, halting production. In March, a drone strike in Krasnodar reduced output by several percent, according to industry reporting. On October 19th, 2025, the Orenburg gas complex, handling 45 billion cubic meters of gas annually, was knocked offline, halting exports and forcing expensive reroutes. Each of these attacks follows the same logic. The approach seeks to avoid Russia's strengths and exploit logistical vulnerabilities. Bleed it where it's vulnerable. Without railways, bridges, and fuel depots, a massive army is just metal sitting in mud. The St. Petersburg explosion, targeting a train, signifies a broader campaign to cripple Russian logistics and undermine Moscow's control. The Kremlin's response, increased internal security, including cameras and patrols, is limited, as effectively guarding vast rail lines is nearly impossible. Every ruble spent protecting the rails is a ruble not spent on the battlefield. Every new security law risks angering the very workers who keep the system running. Some already resent the FSB's heavy-handed interrogations. The harder the Kremlin clamps down, the more resistance it provokes. Internationally, the blast near St. Petersburg has been noticed. For NATO and the Baltic states, it's a signal that Russia's internal stability is weakening. Intelligence teams in Tallinn, Riga, and Warsaw are watching these attacks closely, running simulations for what might happen if chaos spills across borders. For them, this isn't just sabotage, it's proof that Russia's vast military machine is starting to sputter. That perception has power. Western leaders who once feared escalation now see opportunity. If Russia's supply lines can be crippled from within, Ukraine's chances improve dramatically. Support packages grow larger, weapons shipments come faster. What once looked like an endless war of attrition now looks winnable. China too is paying attention, but for different reasons. Those same rail lines under attack connect China to Europe as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Every derailment near Pskov or St. Petersburg disrupts trade routes and insurance costs. Beijing has quietly begun redirecting cargo through safer routes in Central Asia and Turkey. Russia's instability is redrawing Eurasian trade maps, and not to its advantage. Europe feels the ripples as well. Despite sanctions, Russia still exports oil, coal, and grain by rail. When those lines go down, insurance costs spike and deliveries lag. A single technical issue near St. Petersburg can shift commodity prices across continents. Countries that rely on Russian grain or fertilizer, from Egypt to Brazil, see how fragile those supply chains truly are. The most significant impact, however, is psychological. Russia's long-held pride in its logistical prowess, moving anything across any terrain, is dissolving. Images of sabotaged rail infrastructure shatter the myth of total control. This collapse leads allies to become wary, rivals to grow confident, and even neutral partners like India and Turkey to doubt Russia's reliability. The Kremlin's public messaging remains predictable. Officials blame foreign terrorists or shadowy agents, but behind the scenes, the security services are struggling. The FSB has launched sting operations across multiple regions, but decentralized networks are hard to catch. Many saboteurs act independently. Some coordinate loosely with Ukrainian intelligence. Others operate purely out of conviction, using homemade explosives and makeshift tools. Inside Russia, fear is spreading faster than the trains ever did. Soldiers wonder if supplies will reach them. Civilians question whether the state can protect them. Commanders question who's next. What began as local sabotage has grown into something bigger, a quiet war inside Russia's borders. And then there's the political wound. A blast near Putin's hometown isn't just a tactical failure, it's an insult to the system he built on fear and control. It exposes weakness in the myth that he keeps every corner of Russia secure. When the rails that run under his own city explode, the question inside the Kremlin shifts from who did it to whether current security measures are sufficient. Globally, the message is loud and clear. Russia's internal mobility, the foundation of its military power, is under attack. If its logistics can be crippled at home, its operations abroad don't stand a chance. Modern wars aren't won by who fires the most shells. They're won by who keeps the supply lines moving. On that front, Russia is slipping fast. The core question is the origin of the strikes. Ukrainian intelligence is capable and motivated, targeting railways, depots, and energy networks to inflict maximum damage without provoking open conflict. However, domestic Russian resistance groups using simple, low-cost sabotage are also highly effective. That combination, foreign coordination and homegrown resistance, is what terrifies Moscow the most. It's not one enemy, it's everywhere and nowhere at once. And as these groups grow bolder, every mile of track becomes a potential battlefield. The St. Petersburg blast, though singular, signifies a stressed system and a state losing control of vital infrastructure. Moscow's increased rail security strains its budget, military, and public patience. The empire's strength depends on movement. If the trains stop, the empire stalls. And that's what this explosion really means. It wasn't just sabotage. It was a message, a warning that Russia's war is no longer confined to Ukraine. It's bleeding back into its own heartland. Every derailment, every blackout, every viral video of smoke on the horizon chips away at the illusion of control. Tracks can be repaired, restoring confidence is harder, and right now, fear is spreading faster than any train Russia can repair.